I guess Derek, should be lucky that they even made it a split decision. They might as well just gave it unanimous to the Australian, as Derek's been calling him. Derek turned pro February 2007. In 2009, in a rematch with an opponent named Paul Butlin, who he had previously outpointed, Derek was fined $2,500 by the British Boxing Board of Control for biting Butlin in his shoulder. According to Butlin, who wanted a written apology from Chisora, he didn't get one. But Derek said he did it because he got bored and because he couldn't knock Butlin out. That's according to Butlin. He kissed Carl Baker in 2010, full on the lips, at the weigh-in before stopping him at the Wembley Arena. That was an eliminator for the British title, which Danny Williams held a couple of months later. He won the title from Danny Williams in 2 rounds. Won the Commonwealth title to add to that against Sam Sexton in the same year, before losing his unbeaten record to Tyson Fury in 2011. Tyson Fury was 14-0 at the time, and Derek was 14-0 himself. Despite what it says on the scorecards, it was a tough slog. Derek buzzing Tyson on a couple of occasions. Won a 6-rounder up north in Halifax after that. And then the first of one of the controversial decisions that went against him was against Robert Helenius in Helsinki, Finland. Helenius was 16-0, a violent punching, big heavyweight. The vacant European title was on the line, a couple of intercontinental belts, and 3 scores of 115, 113 away from home. Probably tell you the story of what happened. But Helenius got the decision. Vitaly Klitschko, he believed that Derek won the fight, and on the strength of that, he gave Derek a shot at the WBC world title. 18th of February 2012 in Munich. Derek ran riot, slapping Vitaly in his face. Now the Klitschkos are very well-spoken, well-mannered gentlemen, no doubt about that, but they're known to put their opponents in crappy hotels, bad treatment, shortchange them on the purse split, and apparently Derek had his hands wrapped and they made him take it all off and do it again. And the guy from the British Boxing Board of Control, who was supposed to be looking out for Derek, according to Frank Warren, he disappeared. And it got bad to worse. When both men were in the ring, it looked like Vlad was trying to stare over at Derek to intimidate him. And let's remember, Vlad had already pulled out of 2 fights with Derek. One in 2010 with an abdominal injury, and the second one with a back injury. But a lot of people will allege another theory that Emmanuel Stewart just didn't like the look in Derek's eyes. He just didn't like it. And that's why we didn't get them fights. But as Vlad was peering into Derek's eyes and got close enough for Derek to spit a mouthful of water right in Vlad's face, you would have thought, okay, that's enough madness for the weekend. Oh, no. Derek had just started. Vitaly was 45-2 with 41 knockouts and was expected to get rid of Derek, who was 15-2. But in a spirited battle, Derek went the whole 12 rounds, but not just like, okay, I'm just happy to be there for 12. He actually pushed Vitaly pretty hard, and Vitaly wasn't happy after. Vladimir had to step between them, and, it looked like it could have popped off in the ring, but it didn't. Then we got the post-fight press conference, where he ended up in a big brawl with David Haye, which resulted in David Haye actually fighting Chisora rather than Vitaly. David hadn't renewed his license since the Klitschko loss in July 2011. Now we're in July 2012. And the board were not going to renew his license based on what happened in Munich, the big brawl that broke out. Derek was stripped of his British license, so Frank Warren got the Luxembourg Board of Control to sanction the bout. And the British Boxing Board of Control were not happy with that one bit. They weren't happy with Frank. Here's the thing with these situations. Frank is a very powerful man within British boxing. And he's bailed out the British Boxing Board of Control in many scenarios. So they're not going to take it out on Frank Warren, because Frank is their money, basically. They're going to take it out on Derek. And they suspended Derek for a long time, indefinitely. And then eventually, Frank managed to persuade them to give him his license back. But if these things are going to affect anyone, it's the boxer, not a powerful promoter like Frank Warren. So we can establish one enemy there for Derek Chisora, the British Boxing Board of Control. So the David Haye fight went ahead. He was knocked out, and perhaps I think floored for the first time in his career by David Haye in 5. So that's 3 losses on the bounce. He bounces back, wins the European title, becomes the first man to drop Kevin Kingpin Johnson, outpointing him over 12. Then you have the Tyson Fury masterclass where I don't think Tyson got hit with a solid punch and Chisora was pulled out by Don Charles before the bell rang for the 10th round. That was in 2014. In the same year, he threatened to kill a man after an argument in a car park and had to do 60 hours of community service. November 2015, he split with Frank Warren, the end of an 8-year relationship. He turned pro with Frank in 2007. It all came to an end for Frank and Derek. And I think after he saw Derek get dismantled by Tyson Fury, after he struggled against Nascimento over 10, and perhaps all the stuff that he's had to deal with, Derek, fines, brawls, it's a lot of man management. I think Frank tolerated it all this time because, let's keep it real, let's keep it a buck. Derek was Mr. Box Nation for years. Despite what anybody wants to argue, he was Mr. Box Nation. He was their biggest commodity on a lot of occasions. But Frank probably thinking he's washed now after he struggled with Nascimento. It was over as far as Frank was concerned. It was around this period, I believe Derek also parted ways with Don Charles, not for the first time. At times, their relationship appeared to be very volatile, allegedly coming to physical confrontations, and then at others it was like it was them two against the world as coach and fighter. That led to Derek signing up with Asal, and so we saw him fight in Germany a few times. All wins apart from the Kubrat-Pulev fight, which had its controversies as well. Derek was allegedly struck with a water bowl and went haywire, was looking to fight anyone who wanted to throw hands with him. Another controversial loss, though, on points in Germany. In 2016, he's been working with Eddie, Matchroom and Sky on a fight-by-fight basis. And yes, Frank probably thought he was all over for him. And he's lost fights on Matchroom. He's lost a split decision to Dillian. Another controversy. A lot of people think Derek won. There was also the table throwing incident. Dillian and Derek were also scrapping and the gloves are off. It had to be heavily edited. Lost the majority to Ajit Kabayel for the European title in Monaco. Was knocked out by Dillian White, but he's also become a bona fide pay-per-view attraction in his own right. Sharing top billing with Dillian in the rematch. Sharing billing with Josh Taylor and Regis Prograis. He's done pay-per-views against Usyk and yesterday against Joseph Parker. Haven't been impressed with Usyk one bit since he's moved up to heavy. And then the diva demands from his manager wanting to give Joyce 7%. Unacceptable behaviour. And look, I could have been a bitch and said, look, Derek won the fight, but I think Usyk edged it out by a couple of rounds at the most. But let's face it, on another man's territory, he could have easily got a draw with that performance and had few complaints. But you know, I picked Joseph Parker to beat Derek Chisora on points. I thought he was going to be too quick. And when I see Derek comfortably, in my eyes, outpoint him and not get the decision in the UK, it left me in a bad space, I'm not going to lie. I want to big up Ring IQ because he astutely asked the question, has Derek upset anybody? And the facts are, Derek has a lot of enemies. He has a lot of enemies because he's done a lot of stuff. But who doesn't get a decision like that in a fight like that on their own patch? Who? You know, maybe even Eddie threw him under the bus because Eddie said enough so Derek didn't rush him. Yeah, I thought you won. But the way he was reasoning that Derek won, it didn't sound convincing like he really believed it. There was no enthusiasm, and he's a very enthusiastic person. That's what I saw from Eddie. To me, it looked like he was trying to say the right thing so he didn't get chinned. Because one of the first things he said is, oh, I think Derek might chin me. And Andy Clark from Sky, the less said the better. The less said. That scoring from Andy Clark was just weird. And, you know, the judges scoring, I don't even go into it. It seems every week with the judges. What would their motives be? Perhaps threatening to pull out if he didn't come out first against Joe. And that's not the first time he's did that. On the Pro Grace Josh Taylor card, where he wanted top billing. He didn't want to share the billing with them. He thought they was below him because he's a heavyweight. He says, no one cares about you little guys. No one cares about the Ali trophy. And he says, nah, this ain't going to do for me. How about you give me main event status or I pull out? Maybe Sky pulled some strings. Throwing them tables across the room. People like Adam Smith ain't about trying to duck tables and having to subdue Derek Chisora. they ain't built like that. And I'm not saying Dillian was a saint, but he didn't throw tables at anybody. I thought Dillian scraped it, but a lot of people thought Chisora won, but he lost a split decision. And with Sky and Eddie Hearn apparently going separate ways, maybe Sky have got other plans rather than dealing with Derek. Maybe they're not even going to deal with boxing no more. I don't know. We haven't got a clue. And maybe Eddie the same thing. Doesn't want to deal with them kind of temperaments unless they're extremely successful. And maybe either party, Sky or Eddie, see him as a genuine world title contender. Yes, he's entertaining, but is he putting up enough pay-per-view numbers for them to have to go through, oh, is he going to chin me? Is he going to throw tables at someone or attack someone? I don't know. Maybe this is coming back to hurt Derek. I mean, let's face it, Joe Parker, not the greatest heavyweight, not at all. But he's a lot easier to deal with than Derek, isn't he? This ain't the first time that Eddie said that I thought he was going to chin me. When it went off against Dillian in the first fight, Eddie said the same thing. I thought Derek was going to come over and chin me. Now, don't get me wrong, Eddie's had a few moments like that with Dillian, where I thought he was going to come and chin me. But Dillian is more of an expensive commodity than Derek. I shouldn't use terms like that, but boxers are dispensable like that. That's the truth. Dillian is in a very advantageous strategic position for Eddie to be favourable with him right now. He doesn't want to get rid of Dillian and then Al Heyman or Bob Arum gets hold of him, because he could live to regret that. Whereas Derek is a lot older and has got a lot of L's on his record, and we can't write him off yet, but looking at the landscape now, he doesn't have as much upside as a Dillian, whose last victory was an avenged knockout victory over Alexander Povetkin. Now, a few channels have brought up politics as a possible explanation on how decisions are rendered. And there's people in the comment section saying it's ridiculous. And I'm like, really? You don't know any boxing history? Or how much corruption is in boxing at all levels? Do you think that either Anthony Joshua at Sky or DAZN or Tyson Fury on BT or ESPN could put in that same performance that Chisora did against Parker and not get the decision in the United Kingdom? If you believe if Parker had boxed the same fight as Chisora in New Zealand, that Parker wouldn't win by a UD, you're naive, to say the least. Now, it's just theory, but just because the theory can't prove an absolute truth, it doesn't mean a lot of common sense hasn't been put into the theory and logic. Like you saw David Haye, who unbelievably has become Derek's manager after their big rift they had over years. It wasn't just the Munich incident, it was over years. You saw how frustrated he was when Derek said he was going to pull out on Saturday. He was at his wit's end. And nobody wanted to confront Derek. It was his mum in the end who had to reason with him to get back in the ring. And that's the thing. If you're in a profession where, let's stick with boxing. If you're a boxer and you have this intimidating presence and it's not just restricted to the ring, it's threatening to promoters, program directors, like the board, they might be thinking Derek is not a guy we want to represent British boxing just for his outside of the ring shenanigans. And basically, certain decisions going against him could be, because it's just a theory, could be their way of putting him in his place without actually having to confront him face to face. Now, I don't want to come across as tribalist. Fuck all that. Let me just say what I want to say. After what happened to our homegrown fighter on a pay-per-view, Sky Sports, unless you put on absolute ATG level pay-per-view cards, you won't get no more of my money. No way.